Hatred never ceases through hatred. It ceases only through understanding. Buddha, stay here for a moment. Do nothing. Do not try to fix what you feel. Anger does not always arrive as fire. Sometimes it comes as fatigue, as a silent tension the body no longer wants to carry. Much of that anger does not live in the present, but in thoughts that return again and again, replaying scenes, words, gestures that have already passed. Buddhism does not teach us to repress anger or fight against it, but to look at it with such clarity that it loses its force on its own. When the mind stops feeding the story, the fire runs out of fuel. Slowly, the chest softens, the breath deepens, and something inside begins to rest. From this space of stillness arise these 8 Buddhist rules, not as techniques to eliminate emotions, but as a gentle and constant practice to deactivate anger at its root before it turns into suffering. It is not about becoming cold, but free, not about hardening, but about learning to let go. 8 Buddhist rules to destroy anger and disturbance forever. Rule 1. Master the voice that lives in your mind. It is said that a young monk went to his master and said, "Master, my mind gives me no peace, even when I am silent. Inside there is a voice that criticizes me, judges me, and torments me." The master led him to a river and asked him to look at his reflection in the water. Then he took a stick and stirred the surface. The reflection became distorted, broken, unrecognizable. The master said, "The problem is not the reflection, it is the agitated water. When the water becomes still, the reflection clears by itself." The monk understood that he did not need to destroy his mind, but to learn to calm it. This story reveals a profound truth of Buddhism. You are not the voice that speaks in your head, you are the awareness that listens to it. Most suffering does not come from what happens, but from how that inner voice interprets what happens. It is the voice that repeats the offense, exaggerates the problem, anticipates failure, and keeps anger alive. When you do not observe it, it governs your life. When you recognize it, it loses power. The Buddha taught that an undisciplined mind is the main cause of human suffering, not because it thinks, but because it believes every thought as absolute truth. Anger is not born from the insult. It is born from the inner dialogue that says, "This should not happen to me. They disrespected me. I can't stand this." Those phrases are not facts, they are narratives. And every narrative can be questioned. Mastering the inner voice does not mean silencing it by force, but listening with wisdom, recognizing the first thought before it becomes a storm. The moment you say, "This is just a thought," you are no longer trapped in it. You have created space. You have awakened. When you learn to speak to yourself with compassion instead of harshness, something transforms. You stop being your own enemy and become your own guide. You calmly ask whether that anger serves you or chains you, and almost always the answer arises on its own, clear and silent. The Buddha compared a trained mind to a lamp in the night. It does not eliminate the darkness of the world, but it prevents you from stumbling. When you master the inner voice, no offense can drag you down. No provocation can steal your peace without your permission. Because true freedom is not in controlling what others say or do, but in choosing which voice you listen to within. When that voice becomes conscious, serene, and awake, anger runs out of words and peace begins to speak. In the Buddha's teachings, a quiet and profound truth is repeated. It is not the world that binds us, but the untrained mind. Within you, there is a voice that observes, judges, and comments on every experience. That voice decides whether you burn with anger or rest in peace. It is not the offense that wounds you, but the way your mind repeats it. It is not the difficulty that exhausts you, but the story you tell yourself about it. When something happens, the hurried mind whispers, "This is unfair. This always happens to me. Why don't they treat me better?" Buddhism recognizes this voice as the conditioned mind, a mind that does not see reality as it is, but filtered through ego and fear. Suffering is not born from what happens, but from how you speak to yourself about what happens. Think calmly about this. If a stranger mutters something offensive in a language you do not understand, you feel no anger. The words pass like the wind. But if those same words arrive in your own language, your mind grabs them, repeats them, chews on them, and again drives them into your heart. It is not the words that harm you, but your mind's attachment to them. The Buddha compared the untrained mind to a wild elephant. It has great strength, but without guidance, it destroys everything in its path. Training the mind is learning to listen to that inner voice without obeying it blindly, realizing that not every thought deserves to be believed. When anger arises, the first thing that appears is a thought, "They disrespected me. This is unbearable." If you do not observe it, that thought grows, becomes a story, and the story becomes suffering. But if you recognize it in time, you can calmly say, "This is only a judgment, not the truth." And in that instant, the fire loses fuel. The mind tends to repeat what wounds it. But Buddhist practice is not about repeating, it is about replacing with wisdom. When the inner voice insists on complaint, you can answer with a deeper truth. Each being acts according to their level of consciousness, not according to mine. Or, I do not control what happens, but I do control how I respond. And there lies my freedom. Speaking to yourself harshly does not make you strong, it fragments you. The Buddha taught compassion not only toward others, but toward oneself. Do not speak to yourself like a severe judge. Speak like a patient teacher. Ask honestly, is this anger freeing me or chaining me? Is it worth carrying? Much of suffering lives only in imagination, and imagination expresses itself through inner dialogue. If you do not train that voice, it will betray you again and again. But when you learn to observe it, guide it, soften it, nothing external can pull you from your center. A simple practice is nightly contemplation. At the end of the day, sit in silence and observe when your mind exaggerated what happened, what unnecessary stories you added. When you see them clearly, they dissolve, and tomorrow the mind learns to speak with less harshness. Writing is also a form of meditation, not to show the world, but to order the mind. When an emotion persists, write it down. Then observe which thought feeds it and replace it with a calmer one. Thus you train the mind as a monk trains his breath. The mind is like a theater. If you allow scripts of anger to repeat, they will dominate the stage. But when you rewrite the script with awareness and calm, anger has nowhere to act. The next time you feel anger rising, stop and ask yourself, what am I telling myself right now? And you will see clearly that it is not the situation, not the person, not the world. It is the inner voice that fans the fire. And the moment you see it, the fire begins to fade. When you take responsibility for your inner voice, you reclaim your peace. Nothing external can disturb you if your mind does not give permission. This is the true freedom the Buddha taught, not the absence of problems, but a mind that no longer allows itself to be dragged away. Peace begins with the voice you choose to listen to within. Make it conscious, compassionate, and awake. Because when the mind grows still, the world stops being a threat and becomes a teacher. Rule 2. Do not take personally what is born from another's pain. It is said that one day a man came before the Buddha furious and began to insult him with harsh, contempt-filled words. The Buddha listened in silence, without changing his expression, and when the man finished, he calmly asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" Confused, the man replied, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha nodded and said, "So it is with your words. If I do not accept them, they remain yours." In that moment, the man understood that he had been burning alone. This teaching cuts to the heart of awakening. Not everything that reaches you belongs to you. Often, we believe that every word spoken about us defines us, when in truth, it reveals the inner state of the one who speaks. Suffering begins when we make our own what was born from another's pain. Peace begins when we learn not to receive poisoned gifts. When someone wounds you with words, the mind reacts as if those words defined who you are. But that is an illusion. Words do not come from your essence. They come from the inner state of the speaker. Most insults do not speak about you. They speak about the noise within the other person. A bitter heart pours bitterness. An insecure mind projects insecurity. A spirit full of rage fires its anger at the first face it finds. When you understand this, words stop being arrows and become signs, not signs of your worth, but of the other's confusion. In Buddhist teachings, it is said that a person who lives in the fire of suffering unconsciously seeks to burn others. But if you do not extend your hand, the fire cannot touch you. Pain continues only when you decide to carry it. When you repeat the insult in your mind again and again, like a poisonous mantra, you suffer twice. Once when you hear the words, and again when you relive them in silence. But there is another option: to clearly recognize, this is not my burden, it is their noise. This is not my truth, it is their inner storm. And in that instant, suffering loses strength. When someone insults you, they are not describing you, they are revealing themselves. Their words show their level of consciousness, their lack of peace, their inability to look inward. The Buddha taught that one who truly knows himself has no need to wound others, which is why every insult is a mirror of the soul that throws it. Your worth does not depend on external opinions. Imagine holding a precious jewel in your hand. If someone calls it fake, does it lose its value? No. It remains what it is. And so do you. Your dignity is not altered by the noise of others. Words pass like the wind and remain only if you choose to catch them. Silence, many times, is the highest response, not because there is a lack of strength, but because there is an abundance of clarity. When you do not react, you do not feed conflict. When you do not respond, you show that your peace is not for sale. Silence is not submission, it is inner sovereignty. Yes, words can hurt, the body feels them. The ego contracts, but remember this: if you carry another's poison, you allow them to wound you twice. First, it wounds you through words, and then it steals your calm. In Buddhism, an insult is compared to a burning coal. It only burns if you pick it up, and if you let it fall, it has no power. So, instead of asking why you were attacked, look deeper and ask what kind of pain must live inside someone who needs to hurt another. Because that understanding does not make you cold. It makes you free by removing the personal weight. The next time someone tries to humiliate you with words, remain upright in silence. Breathe. Observe. And remember, this does not belong to me. I do not need to carry what was born from a restless heart. Walk away with dignity and let the insult return to its source, to the mind that has not found peace. Because when you stop taking attacks personally, you become untouchable. They may shout, criticize, or mock, but their words cannot chain you if you refuse to carry those chains. For the wise do not fight shadows. They keep walking, light and serene, protected by inner calm. Rule 3 is to remain here, in this moment. And it is said that a disciple once asked the Buddha why he still suffered even when everything seemed calm. And the Buddha picked up a dry leaf and asked whether it was alive or dead. And when the disciple said it was dead, the Buddha smiled and replied that his suffering was the same. The pain was no longer alive. Yet he continued to carry it, revealing one of Buddhism's deepest teachings. Pain rarely lives in the now. It lives in memory, clinging to the past, and in imagination, fearing the future. While the present moment is silent, it does not accuse, betray, or punish. It simply is. When you stay here, returning to the breath, to the weight of your feet on the ground and the sounds around you, something inside settles, and you discover that much of your anger never had roots in reality, but in repeated thoughts. For presence is not escaping the world, but inhabiting it fully, without adding unnecessary stories. And each time the mind drifts to yesterday or tomorrow, you gently return, not by force, but by awareness. Because the present is your refuge where there is nothing to defend, correct, or fear. Only this clean and sufficient instant. And when you learn to live here, anger loses its fuel, and peace naturally blooms. Most anger, anguish, and frustration do not arise from what is happening now, but from what the mind replays from the past or imagines about the future. So while the body is here, the mind wanders and suffering begins, replaying old wounds or anticipating betrayals that have not yet happened. And this is how anger takes root. Yet the Buddha taught that your true power lives in the present moment. Only here can you choose how to think, where to place attention, and how to respond. So anchoring yourself in the now is like dropping a deep anchor in a stormy sea where waves move, but you remain steady. Observe the mind gently when it wanders. Notice when you are remembering or imagining, and simply naming it is awakening. Then return through the body by feeling your breath and surroundings. Because the present does not insult, betray, or punish. It simply is. And ask calmly what you can do now. For conscious action in the present dissolves imagined anger, and often preserving your peace is the wisest action. Much anger is born from shoulds, but the Dharma reminds us that reality does not bend to preferences, and acceptance softens inner conflict. So practice presence daily. Breathe attentively. Observe without judgment, and slowly the mind learns to live now, where small annoyances lose weight and everything remains neutral until the mind turns it into a painful story. For the Buddha taught deep acceptance, not demanding life be different, but learning to be at peace with what is, because anger feeds on past and future, while peace flowers in the now, making you untouchable when anger rises. Ask honestly whether you are reacting to reality or to memory or imagination. Return to the breath and watch much of it dissolve before taking form, remembering that nothing external has power unless you grant it. That anger is a silent thief of clarity and serenity, and that freedom is not a life without challenges, but a mind no longer dragged by them. Begin today. Practice in small moments, and watch old reflexes fade as life grows quieter, the mind clearer, and the spirit stronger, repeating daily that you live in the present and peace is your anchor. Rule 4 is to separate what happened from the story your mind created. Because the Buddha taught that it is not the world that wounds us, but the unexamined interpretation. As suffering is born not from events, but from the silent narrative we attach to them. Like when a sudden traffic incident triggers anger, even though the event itself was neutral, and pain arose only when the mind clung to a story. For between stimulus and reaction, there is a space called awareness where freedom lives. And when you ask whether you suffer from what happened or from what you think about what happened, you return to the present where peace exists, remembering that the fact is neutral. Judgment is optional, and anger burns only the one who holds it. So be like a deeply rooted tree in a storm, letting winds pass while remaining standing, repeating as a quiet mantra that no one controls your peace except you. Rule 5 is to accept that people are people. Because on the path of the Dharma, the Buddha never asked us to expect perfection from the world. On the contrary, he taught us to see reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. Since suffering is born when the mind clings to unrealistic expectations and then feels betrayed when life does not fulfill them. And expecting human beings never to fail is one of the deepest roots of anger. Every person you meet carries their own ignorance, fear, desire, and confusion, what Buddhism calls avidya, spiritual blindness. And in most cases, this is not conscious malice, but lack of awareness. And when you understand this, something shifts inside you. You stop taking others' behavior as a personal attack and begin to see it as an expression of human suffering. Just as you would not rage at a child who falls while learning to walk, but understand that falling is part of learning. Yet when an adult stumbles, morally lies, hurts, or acts selfishly, we forget that same compassion and demand that everyone be awake and wise, condemning ourselves to constant irritation. The Buddha compared those dominated by ignorance to someone wounded and acting from pain, and anger will never awaken them. It will only poison you. So when you accept that human beings are imperfect by nature, surprise disappears. And when surprise disappears, anger loses its grip, allowing you to respond consciously without justifying, to act without losing your center, preparing your mind each morning with the intention that you will meet confused or unfair people and that none of this has the power to steal your peace. Seeing others through the eyes of the Dharma, not as enemies, but as beings who have not yet learned. Reducing expectations not as resignation but as wisdom. Letting broken promises and selfish gestures become reminders of the human condition, from which firm compassion is born, one that sets boundaries without hatred, because peace arises not when others change, but when you align expectations with reality. Rule 6 is to learn to pause before responding. For at the heart of the Buddha's teaching lies the sacred space between what happens and what you do, the moment where freedom and wisdom are born. A space anger cannot survive because anger depends on speed and impulse. And even a single conscious breath can break its hold, whether in humiliation or traffic or betrayal. Because pausing is not weakness, but inner mastery, trained through breath. Reminders like, "My peace is not for sale," delayed responses, and small daily pauses that strengthen presence, extinguishing the flame before it becomes a fire. Since patience is not silent endurance but deep understanding, and responding calmly breaks the world's expectation of reaction and proves true strength. Rule 7 is to release the fire before it burns you. Because clinging is the root of suffering, and anger survives not by the event itself, but by the mind, replaying it again and again, turning one moment into 1,000 wounds. Like holding a burning coal that only burns the one who grips it. And letting go is not forgetting or justifying, but choosing peace over wounded pride, recognizing the weight you carry, refusing the second wound of constant replay, acting wisely where possible and accepting what is not, visualizing anger as a stone you can drop, because unreleased anger poisons thought, relationships, and rest, while releasing quickly is profound wisdom, returning you to the present, reminding you that life is brief and fragile, and asking whether you wish to spend it feeding resentment or choosing serenity. For the faster you let go, the lighter your soul becomes, and a light mind walks farther on the path of awakening. Rule 8 is to turn problems into teachers. Because on the path of awakening, the Buddha taught that nothing enters our lives by mistake. What you resist persists, and what you understand transforms you. For obstacles do not appear to punish you, but to awaken you. And every difficulty, every offense, every frustration is a silent invitation to grow in awareness. The untrained mind sees problems as personal attacks. Someone disrespects you, and the heart feels wounded. Something blocks your path, and a sense of injustice arises. Life changes course, and you believe it is punishing you. But the Dharma reminds us of a deeper truth. Life never promised comfort. It promised learning, and it is the uneven road, not the easy path, that strengthens the spirit. Anger arises when reality fails to match expectation. Yet the moment you change the question from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What is this here to teach me?" something softens inside. The problem stops being an enemy and becomes practice. The obstacle stops blocking you and begins training you. For the Buddha compared the mind to an invisible muscle that cannot grow without resistance. Without challenge, there is no patience. Without contradiction, no humility. Without disappointment, no letting go. And each trial is a form of spiritual training. So when someone triggers your anger, ask not why they did this to you, but which quality is being trained now, whether calm, detachment, or compassion. And in making this inner shift, frustration loses its grip and becomes conscious discipline. When things do not go as planned, instead of saying "this ruined everything," remind yourself calmly that this is part of your training. Just as weight in the gym strengthens the body, difficulty strengthens character. And without that weight, there is no progress. And without that challenge, no awakening. For even pain carries a lesson. A harsh word can teach resilience. A delay can teach patience. A loss can teach acceptance, and if you focus only on the wound, suffering lingers. But if you honor the lesson, the wound becomes wisdom. Imagine being betrayed and choosing either to replay the anger endlessly or to step back and ask what this teaches you about human nature, your limits, and your own strength, turning the lesson into a shield that protects your peace. Or imagine losing a long-sought opportunity and letting the awakened mind whisper that this loss is training in acceptance, preparing you for what you cannot yet see. Because the obstacle does not destroy you, it builds you. The Buddha himself lived surrounded by misunderstanding, rejection, and difficulty, yet never saw life as an enemy, only as steps toward liberation. And when you begin to see problems as teachers, something profound happens. You stop being surprised by difficulty. Preparation replaces anger. Clarity replaces resentment. Knowing that life will continue to bring challenges. People will fail. Plans will change. None of which you can control. But you can control the way you receive each experience. Choosing curiosity over anger and learning over resistance. The next time anger rises because life is not going as expected, pause and ask honestly what lesson is hidden here for you. remembering the obstacle came not to break you, but to teach you. And when you make this shift, nothing is wasted. Every trial becomes training. Every insult, instruction. Every stumble, hidden strength. So you stop resenting life and begin to embrace it, growing with it, and rising beyond anger into wisdom. Holding this truth in your heart and repeating it whenever needed. Every obstacle is my teacher, not my enemy.